Tucker Carlson brings notable entertainer Ice Cube on his show. A prominent Republican sides with Kamala Harris, and Dylan Mulvaney shares everything he's learned from pretending to be a woman. All that and more today on Speechless, The Daily Show. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Speechless, The Daily Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Phares, the 22-year-old college student from Central Illinois, giving his thoughts on what's going on in the world around us. Well, everybody, we got a few big stories, a few fun stories to cover today. But first, I want to remind everybody, please don't forget to like this video. It's right down there. You can hit the thumbs up. Please do that. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Please, it's going to be coming up in this corner right over here, probably about right down there. Come on, you should hit it. You should hit it. We're trying to get up to 1,000. You could be part of that. You could be part of getting this channel up to 1,000 because that's my goal. That's my first goal. Let's get it up to 1,000. Also, share the video. If you like anything that I got to say, or you're just interested in it, or you want to rip me on Twitter or something, I don't care. You could share this video, share it with your friends, whatever. And also leave me a comment. I don't have this in the little thing that I got going right there, but leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about anything that I talk about in this video. I want to know what you think because this show is about all of us. It's called Speechless. It's speechless because there's this thing that a lot of people talk about called the silent majority. And the left wants us to stay silent, but we won't be speechless any longer. Speechless with Phares. Here we go, everybody. First story of the day is Tucker Carlson had Ice Cube, who's the prominent rapper of part of the group NWA. I can't even say the name because it includes a word I'm not allowed to say. But NWA, he was the prominent rapper in that, rapped the song F the Police back in the 90s. So he's never been quite a very strong conservative individual. But there's something really interesting about the fact that he went on the Tucker Carlson on Twitter. And so we're going to watch part of this, maybe all of it, and react to it a little bit, just because he frames himself as a free thinker. And I haven't watched all of it yet, but let's just take a look and check out this interview Tucker Carlson did with rapper Ice Cube.
So why would you be doing this of all interviews? I mean, you could do an interview with anyone. You're doing an interview with me. Obviously, you're going to take abuse for doing that. Like, why would you do that?
Because I think it's silly not to talk to people. I think whether we agree or not,
right,
that has nothing to do with it. You know, it's like, this is what it's all about. Let's talk about it. Let's debate. And you know, I've been shut out.
That sounds like right-wing extremism and what aboutism?
But I've been shut out. You know, some platforms will not have me on.
Why?
They don't like that I'm, you know, an independent thinker. I'm not part of the herd. I'm not part of the go along to get along gang.
And so that's like this is the fascinating thing about Tucker Carlson. So I don't always side with Ice Cube. He oftentimes says, I mean, literally has a song F the Police, which is like, ooh, it's like kind of, I mean, you want to talk about something that could cause public disturbances. Maybe that song a little bit. Everybody wants to go crazy about try that in a small town. But what about F the Police? Do you think that caused any problems and uprising? I don't know. Maybe. But so I don't always side with Ice Cube, but I think the fascinating thing about Tucker Carlson on Twitter is he's able to, especially not being on Fox anymore. One, not having a cable news show is it allows him to do more long form content where he's able to sit down with somebody and really get to the heart of certain issues and talk to them about things that are going on, a lot more unfiltered. But the other thing too is he gets to talk to people that have been banned by other media or shadow banned, whatever, simply for going against the grain of certain topics. And so let's keep watching more. But I just wanted to point that out of how Tucker is able to get these interviews, even with people that I disagree with, he disagrees with, because of his very free thinking attitude and his more free ability being on Twitter rather than on cable news,
so to speak. So, you know, I'm an outsider. And so, you know, I'm not part of the club. So I have to go places for one that I'm welcome, and where I can voice my opinion without somebody, you know, saying I'm a bad person and that they never want to have me on their platform again.
What platforms have banned you?
I've been, you know, I tried to go on The View. They didn't have me on The View.
Why?
Well, a few of the guests just really didn't like where I was coming from. So, or a few of the hosts, I mean. So that's what I was told by the producers. You know, I don't know if the producers was just copping out and using some of the hosts to not have me come on and explain myself. But
I'm willing to bet it was Whoopi. I'm willing to bet Whoopi can't. Honestly, Whoopi. Anybody tries to ever challenge Whoopi, and she crumbles because she's a lackluster comedian, a failed comedian, if you ask me, and that's really what she is. So, who really knows? But I'm willing to bet it was probably Whoopi. Maybe Joy too. Oh, Joy probably hates Ice Cube. Free thinkers. The View doesn't want free thinkers. Even their conservative hosts, they're not conservative. They just recognize there's another side. But you can go watch any of my View videos. I've reacted to multiple things The View has done. Ugh. Worst of daytime television.
Yeah, good booking for them.
I've been on there before.
Yeah.
It's just when I've became an independent thinker, when I've, I'm not, I don't follow their brand of politics, I guess.
But if you can't think for yourself, then you're not really free, are you?
No, you're not. You're not. But I've been excluded. I've been excluded on Oprah.
On Oprah?
On Oprah, yeah, I've been excluded. Yeah, man.
I would think you'd be the person Oprah would want to promote. I mean, you grew up in South Central. You were successful at a young age. You have dignity. You say what you think. Like, I thought that was the goal.
Me too. I don't know what it is, but, several of my, I had a movie called Barbershop,
I remember.
That I wasn't invited to participate with the cast. I produced a show called Black White, and it was a very controversial show. And once again, they had the whole cast on, but I wasn't invited. And so I don't know.
On Oprah's show.
Yeah, so I don't know what that's.
My God.
But Oprah is obviously a saintly, godlike figure who's revered by all decent people. Why would she exclude you?
You get an interview. You get an interview. You get an interview. You get an interview until you get to Ice Cube. Nope. No interview for Ice Cube. He doesn't get to be on. And let's hear exactly why he was excluded.
I really don't know.
He doesn't know.
That's something that I would love to find out. But I can't tell you, if there's a single thing that I've done or said to her.
Have you noticed that it is more controversial to criticize Oprah than to burn the American flag?
Really?
Seems that way. I've never heard anybody criticize Oprah. Do you think it's political or do you think it's deeper than that? You're not like a right winger.
No.
You don't even seem that political.
No, I'm not really. I'm pretty much, just want to do right by the people, So if that comes through political means, that comes through the private sector, wherever it comes, I'm down to work with whoever's down to do something right for the people.
So I remember reading you say something along the lines of, I didn't vote for Trump. I'm not a Trump voter. You actually attacked Trump at one point, but you were willing to meet with Trump. Do you think that crossed the line?
I think some people didn't like that, but I think it's idiotic. Enemies meet.
Right.
They talk. I'm pretty sure there's some communication between Russia and the Ukraine right now. Somebody's on the phone talking to somebody, trying to come up with a solution. So we just got to talk. That's the only way we're going to work this out. I know when the talking stops, the fighting starts. A lot of people, they think.
When the talking, I think that's a really important quote. That's why I paused there. And again, like I've seen some clips of this already, so I don't know everything that's going to happen. But I think that's a really important quote right there. When the talking stops, the fighting starts. And I think that's kind of the whole point of the show is like, I'm willing to, and I have some things in the works. I do have some things in the works, but I want to talk with liberals and leftists, progressives, socialists, communists. I don't care. Moderate Republicans, moderate Democrats, I want to talk with everybody. I want conversation to happen. And that's exactly what Ice Cube's saying. And I do think that's a really good point, is when the conversation stops, the fighting starts. Well, what have we seen? Back in 2020, conversation stopped. No one wanted to have a conversation about police brutality or anything. No one on the left or the right. The right did a little bit. They were willing to talk about it. But they wanted to have a conversation. The left didn't want to have a conversation. The left was unbelievably angry and unhinged and then destroyed cities. The right in 2021, late 2020, early 2021, was incredibly unhappy with how the election turned out at the end of 2020, claimed that there was rampant voter fraud, everything like that. And here's what happens is it started off with saying, Let's have a conversation about what the heck happened, because we do not believe that was a free and fair election. The left said, shut your mouths. It was, and you can't question it. Then the fighting started. And that's what happened on January 6th. And again, January 6th, hundreds of thousands of people, whatever, went to the rally on January 6th, peacefully protested it. Only a small fraction of that actually caused any violence or damage. But that's all besides the point. When the conversation stops, when the talking stops, the fighting starts. Great words. Let's keep going.
I think I'm a Republican. I'm a right winger. Just because I was willing to speak to the Trump administration, and I was willing to speak with the Biden administration as well.
Have you?
One guy in the administration, but it didn't go anywhere. It was basically a, take my temperature kind of call. We'll get to it. But they never got to it or never planned to. As a matter of fact, the guy left the administration. So after talking to him for a year or so, he was gone. And then, we were left really with no one to continue the conversations.
What do you think of Biden?
I don't think he's given the people who put him in exactly what they thought they were going to get from him.
His most loyal voters, according to the polls anyway, are black voters, particularly black women.
Mm-hmm.
And those numbers don't seem to change. So no matter what happens or doesn't happen. So do you expect they ever will change?
Whether they become independents and not vote for anybody who's not bringing it. It's like people want your vote. They have to do something to earn it. If they don't earn it, why are you going down there and pulling that lever?
Because the other side hates you. That's the pitch they make. We may suck, but the other side hates you.
You're supposed to dance with the person you brought.
Yeah.
And the person that brought you to the dance, you guys are supposed to dance together. And if that doesn't happen, you got to go find another dancing partner.
What an interesting analogy. And I don't know how exactly he's going to finish it, but I just wanted to chime in real quick about how you're supposed to dance with the person you brought. And so to even carry that out further, which he might be about to do, is because what Tucker's trying to say is a lot of people voted for Biden or stay on the Democratic train because the Democrats push a false narrative that everybody hates you because of your race. The Democrats try to say, well, the Republicans hate you because you're black. And so then they oftentimes stay on what is called the Democratic plantation. And what Ice Cube is trying to say is that you need to vote for the person that you need to go to the dance with the person that you want to go to the dance with. You shouldn't go to the dance with somebody you shouldn't go to the dance with Chad to make Jason angry, to bring it into like high school prom terms, You shouldn't go to the dance with Joe to make Donald angry or to spite Donald. Go to the dance with who you want to dance with. I think fascinating idea right there.
Before
Poetic analogy.
The music stops.
What do you think of Kamala Harris?
Obviously she's a great politician to be able to become the vice president of.
That's not a compliment. I don't think maybe it is from him, but saying you're a great politician, not a compliment.
Of the country. I don't know how effective she is at her job.
There we go.
What's your view of the police at this point?
It's the same. They it really is.
Okay.
It's like looking at what's your view of the military? They're the military. They're always going to be the military. If I asked you this in 1946, you'd be like, they're the military.
Yeah.
So it's a fraternity. It's an organization that does things a certain way. And I think their philosophy sometimes is detrimental to the people they're serving, because I think cops have a win and make it home philosophy. Win whatever battles you have in the street, make it home at night. And that's actually the most important thing. And everything else, people's rights, doing things the right way, being totally fair and square all the time and not, being a little aggressive, all that comes second to win the encounter, make it home at night. And you can't really fault somebody for thinking that way as a police officer, but that's the philosophy. So everything else comes second to that. So Guy might not care if he violated your rights. He's going to win this encounter. He's going to make it home tonight. And that's all that matters. And sometimes I think that's what we see is an organization hell-bent on winning and not a fraternity or organization hell-bent on upholding the law and doing everything right.
I can understand where he's coming from on that. I don't know if Tucker's going to give any pushback. I mean, I would disagree is to an extent. I think it's just an overgeneralization. Yeah, I don't doubt that there's cops out there. I think it kind of also depends on where you are a cop, because if you're a cop in Chicago, I do not blame you for any reason to say, I just need to stay alive in whatever way. And this is a job of survival. And I need to stay alive and make it home tonight. And everything else is secondary. I don't blame you if you're in Chicago and you're like that, because the way Chicago treats its police officers is pretty bad. I mean, they consistently pass laws to undermine law enforcement to make it so that, I mean, heck, you could arrest a guy, but they're prosecutors. They're not going to get prosecuted. They're not going to get prosecuted. Same with like San Francisco, LA, New York. Like I don't blame you if that's the way that you, and those are the places that really need their police officers to not be just playing a game of survival. They need to support them and push them to actually have their first priority be upholding the law. Because if you go to a lot of smaller towns, and if you go to places in which they not only support their police officers, but also have a lesser population density to worry about per officer, I guarantee you they are much more motivated by supporting the law and upholding the law than just playing a game of survival. But I think that's probably I mean, Ice Cube, it comes from like urban areas. I mean, he grew up like in Compton, in California. And so like, yeah, of course, to him, the idea of the police, and he still lives in California in an urban area. And so of course, to him, police's game is survival, because that's how it is in places that don't support the police. Just saying.
Or by the book, so to speak.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's just the nature of that fraternity.
Maybe of organizations.
Yeah. You know, they come with a philosophy, and, you know, you can try to buck it if you want to, but more than likely they're going to get you out the way and stay in formation.
Do you think that it's harder to be a man in America now than it was when you were a kid?
That's an interesting question.
Saying what you feel, being yourself, is what they call toxic. You know, we shouldn't be called toxic for our instincts and for, you know, I was born this way. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, why can't we be ourselves? We were born this way too.
So there are some groups, like if I say I'm trans, and people say, that's great, you were born that way, we affirm you. But if you say I'm just a dude with male instincts, you're not affirmed, you're attacked. Yeah, I mean, everybody doesn't really have to affirm you. You know, if I wake up and say, you know, I feel like a pigeon. And I want everybody to treat me like a pigeon. Some people may say, whatever, Q, we treat you like a pigeon. But some people may choose to be like, dude, no. That's your world. I'm not part of it. And I have to be ready for that.
I 100% agree, and I think that is one of the most important things. I don't know what happens in the rest of the interview. We are going to watch it, but I think that is one of the most important things is, what is this thing about everybody feeling so needed to be affirmed in everything? People are not going to... I grew up, and one of the things that I was always told is there are going to people that just simply do not like you. When I was young, I wanted everybody to like me. I was a people pleaser. I wanted everybody to like me. I wanted to be loved and everything. And now, I mean, at my college, I'm one of the most hated people because I simply decide to speak the truth to power, and people don't tend to like that. But what is this thing about everyone? And it extends past the gender thing. Like, right? Like, it's not just, oh, I feel like a woman. I'm Dylan Mulvaney. I feel like a woman. You need to call me a woman. It's not just that affirmation. That's a big part of it. But it's also, people need to feel affirmed in every little thing, no matter what. Like, think about like the fat phobia and the fat acceptance movement that's going on. I need you to tell me, my name's Lizzo, I am a behemoth, and I need you to tell me that I'm beautiful. Despite the fact that I'm objectively not, I need you to affirm my delusion. that I'm beautiful and I'm healthy and I'm perfect. There was a joke on South Park about Caitlyn Jenner, strong and beautiful, strong and beautiful, strong and beautiful, strongest woman, strong woman. Because we live in a society where you need to affirm everybody else's psychosis. And if you do not, you are a bigot and you will be fired and you will be made speechless. Pun intended. Absolutely. Let's keep going. I love that part of it. I think that is one of the biggest messages of this entire interview.
It's a big world out here. Everybody doesn't have to adhere to me.
That's called narcissism, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's called narcissism.
Seems like you're trying to bend the universe.
I love it.
To your will. And it don't work like that.
We've been talking almost all day now. You haven't mentioned race a single time. We've mentioned economics, rich and poor, a number of times. Do you think
This will be very interesting.
that we overplay the role of racial conflict in American life?
Yes. I think race, it takes up too much space. There's people that we all have in our lives who are same race that we can't stand. And there's people in our lives from other races that we get along with way better. So it's not about race. It's not about color and gender and this and that. It's about who do you connect with? You know, who do you vibrate with? You know what I mean? Who's on the same wavelength? Who wants to be the same kind of person? Who wants to do the right thing when you want to do the right thing? That's who you connect with. So I think a lot of people make a lot of money off of the racists fighting against each other and bickering. And they the ones who push it in our face all the time that we're separate. And
does feel like there's more of that, doesn't there?
Yeah, it seems like it's like you're stuck in a bad movie and you can't get out. Like you can't find the exit and it continues to play on the screen and you're just running around looking for the exit. And this bad movie continues to just haunt you day by day by day by day. You know, that's what we're caught in. A never-ending, winless battle of, you know, of race and color, and we're worried about, you know, where you from, and you know, hip hop. What's great about hip hop, like it was a saying in hip hop, early hip hop. I think Rakim coined this phrase. You know, it ain't where you from, it's where you at. You know, and it's so true. It's not about where you come from. It's about where you at right now.
I'm not imagining that this stuff is being pushed on us, right?
No.
Much more than in, say, 1986.
Yes, I think so. Because in 1986, you had movies and television, and it was all scripted, and we knew this is a scripted show. But I think now you have so many so-called reality shows that basically push the same thing, but in a reality-like setting. So, you know, you'll watch a movie on race, okay? And you flip the channel now, you're watching a somewhat like documentary reality show that's highlighting and magnifying race and status and where you belong in this country and where you don't. And, you know, we're highlighting the bad guys here. We're highlighting the good guys, you know. It's always really showing controversy and pitting each other against each other. And with the reality shows, you know, controversy sells. So they're not showing people getting along. What they want to get to is the fight, the conflict, you know, the argument, the throwing of the bottles, the, you know, the turmoil, the differences. And, you know.
Does that bear any resemblance to your actual life as someone who lives in this country? Like, do you have racial conflict in your life day to day?
Probably, you know, most of them are unseen. You know, I'm not going to say I encounter racism. People know who I am. Police know who I am. Everybody knows who I am. So I probably get a pass on a lot of things that friends, family members, people I associate with, people I love go through all the time because they're not Ice Cube. But, you know, I've had an insurance company drop me because they didn't like my point of view. You know, things like that.
So, and I'm obviously going to keep going with this because it's absolutely fascinating, but a few things to break down with it. First is He's absolutely right. I mean, I call it out on this show all the time how people try to see race more often than they should for the purpose of trying to find racism. I mean, I talked about this just yesterday with "Try That in a Small Town," Jason Aldean song. People were intentionally trying to find how it was racist so that they could continue the divide on race. That's what a lot of, I mean, like if you look at a lot of BLM and what they push, if you look at, you'll see a lot of things called the anti-black movements, which are actual, like it's like basically a new age kind of Black Panther kind of thing, like where they call out people that are anti-black, but they'll push things like saying like voter ID is racist and all that kind of crap. Everything is racist nowadays. Math is racist. Reading is racist. Speaking correct English, the King's English, that's racist. Everything's racist because it's a device to pit us against each other. And ultimately, he doesn't necessarily say this, but for people to keep political power. Because if you are, and he actually does kind of say this earlier on, is that if you are on the quote unquote Democrat plantation, you are not going to leave that if you truly believe that the other side hates you. And so they need to continuously sow that racial division to push that people back onto that Democratic plantation. Absolutely. The other thing he's getting into right here is about how, I mean, whatever this insurance company dropped him because of his point of view. Fascinating, because they didn't drop him because of his race. The left would have you believe that the people are more divided on race than ideological standpoint. However, no, the biggest divide America currently has is the ideological standpoint. You have people, you have banks that have frozen people's funds because of the group they support. It happened. What about the truckers? Remember the truckers that were going across Canada and even some in America that were protesting vaccine mandates? Banks froze their funds. Yeah, because of what they believed in, not because of their race, not because of their gender, their identity. No, because of their ideological differences. And I hope he goes a little bit more into that divide, because that's what I think is really the biggest divide in America right now.
Are you mad about it? Are you mad at people for their skin color ever in the course of a day?
I'm not mad at people because of their skin color. You know, I'm mad at people because of what they do and the things they choose not to do.
Right.
Their ideological preferences.
Big problem in this country.
Their values.
With the financial, banking system, and Black people and our access to capital. You know, I know that when it breaks down, we have, 13 to 15% of the country trying to live off of half a percentage of wealth, 0.05% of wealth. So that's an issue. That's a problem. We have to have access to capital so we can do cool things for South Central. If we drove past one of those lots and a guy that lived there wanted to put a store up, he just couldn't get along because of his zip code. Now, guys from outside the area, they can come in and they can get along and put that store up. And that has to change.
How do people live in this state who aren't making a lot of money?
I mean, things are so expensive. Houses that used to cost, like my father, I think he bought his house 47 grand, maybe. And now it's worth 650.
The house you grew up in?
The house I grew up in.
My gosh.
It's worth $650,000.
And that's in South Central?
South Central.
That's insane.
Huh. So the middle class has shrunk in this state.
Without a doubt, or left. They definitely shrunk, and we have a lot of people leaving the state because they just can't afford it.
If you were running the state, wouldn't that be a big concern for you?
Yeah, I think it's a major problem because you not only have people leaving, you have industries leaving. Tesla, they just put up a plant in Texas, so they left California. Many big companies have left California.
I've noticed something weird. I've never been a big hip hop fan, but I've met a bunch of hip hop performers.
Yeah,
and they're all pretty open-minded, way more open-minded than, say, your average college professor. I wouldn't have expected that. Why do you think that is?
I also wouldn't have expected that.
College professors, they all want their jobs, and if their staff or administration is saying, "Hey, we think this way at this college," sometimes they understand what that is and they stick to those guidelines. Rappers, we're free spirits for the most part. Some of us who are not locked down to these crazy contracts, but we know doing things the way they were done in the past hasn't really gotten us as far along as a people as we have wanted. So we tend to break the mold. We tend to be disruptors. We tend to not wait for an invitation to the party. We tend to either come in through the window, you know what I mean, or kick the front door down. But we're coming to the party. So that's how we've actually been able to gain success, because everybody wants you to be in your little hole. Everybody wants you to stay in your lane and all that stupid stuff. And as soon as I hear that, I'm out of my lane immediately.
But you should stay in your lane, don't you think?
No. If I would have stayed in my lane, I wouldn't be here. I would still be in South Central Los Angeles, not following my dreams.
So you're not surprised that rappers tend to be more open-minded at all?
Not at all. Not at all. Because they want to go for it. They want new experiences. They want to carve their own path. And, they're not going to conform. They're not going to conform because that gets you nowhere.
So that was the interview with Ice Cube on Tucker Carlson on Twitter. I don't usually like doing reaction videos to things that are that long, but I do find it important to occasionally tune in to what is going on, especially with Tucker Carlson's show, as I know not everybody is very active on Twitter. This gives you an opportunity to see it, and obviously I get to react to it, and I think that was an absolutely fascinating interview. And again, just to reiterate, I think it's so great how Tucker brings on people, and again, I doubt that he 100% agrees, Tucker 100% agrees with everything that Ice Cube believes in. I think that there's probably things that he disagreed with in that. But it's good to bring on somebody who has been silenced in other areas of the media. It can attest to a different level of expertise. I mean, his expertise being more of hip hop and entertainment, as Tucker's obviously much more news, politics, and that level of media. And so bringing on somebody who thinks about things differently and has had different experiences to provide an interesting ideology and an interesting viewpoint on that. But going off and kind of honestly in a similar idea, everybody just real quick, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. That like button is right down there. Give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel right over here. You can click on something. You could also go into the channel and subscribe in some other way, and give me a comment. Let me know exactly what you're thinking about maybe let me know what you thought about the Ice Cube video, and what do you agree? What do you disagree with Ice Cube on? Leave me a comment. I want to see it. Like and subscribe and comment. Let's hear that. But going off on a similar tangent, a prominent Republican congressman sided with Kamala Harris recently. Byron Donalds, the Republican out of Florida, sided with Kamala Harris. In a tweet, the Republican congressman from Florida stated, "The new African-American standards in Florida are good, robust, and accurate. That being said, the attempt to feature the personal benefits of slavery is wrong and needs to be adjusted. That obviously wasn't the goal, and I have faith that the Florida Department of Education will correct this." So what is he talking about? And how did he agree with Kamala? Well, we're going to get into that. So he linked in that same tweet an article from Wink News. The article states, quote, "The new standard says within the Florida Department of Education for middle schoolers, they must learn, quote, how slaves developed skills in which, in some instances, could be applied for their personal benefit." This has caused an uproar with lefties as Kamala Harris visited Florida last week to actually speak on this very topic, among others, and she got very, very angry. Compared to Byron Donalds, Kamala was unhinged. Byron Donalds was tame. Let's take a look at this clip right here.
They push forward revisionist history.
Oh, it's always revisionist.
Just yesterday in the state of Florida, they decided middle school students will be taught that enslaved people benefited from slavery.
not really true, but okay.
They insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not stand for it.
Who's the real gaslighter here?
Joining us
Kamala,
now, the
or you?
host of MSNBC's Politics Nation, president of the National Action Network, Reverend Al Sharpton. Rev, good morning. I had to dig in and read this because the headline I thought couldn't be true, but here it is, a 216-page document.
Let's just see what Al Sharpton has to say about this. This will be good. I honestly only watched the Kamala clip, but let's see this now.
From the Florida State Board of Education, one section that reads, slaves developed skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefits. I never thought I'd see both sidesism of slavery taught in public schools.
It's not.
Well, it is not only insulting, it is humiliating. And it really is dangerous because it will instruct young people, if it is allowed to go forward, not only a distorted version of American history, but it robs us from seeing where we are. When you see the vice president going to Florida today to really give national spotlight to this, it shows also how far the country's gone, that you have a first time in the history of the country, a woman and a black woman, a woman of color as vice president that came from a history of slavery. So to distort how brutal slavery is like saying an abused woman, a man say I abused her because I was trying to get her bad lineage out of her family.
I don't even know what the heck he's saying anymore. I'm done with that. Al Sharpton is an absolute grifter, and he obviously doesn't understand the legislation whatsoever. But there are some people that do. But carrying on with the story, before I react to all that, because Kamala Harris is wrong. It is not revisionist history. Al Sharpton is wrong. It is not distorting history. There is historical backing behind this. Again, what it says is how middle schoolers must learn how slaves developed skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. We're going to break down exactly what this is, but finishing off the article to Wink News, from Wink News, Congressman Donald said, slavery was terrible in our country. It was terrible for black people coming to America, and it's just flat out wrong. No doubt about that. 100% agree. Slavery was absolutely wrong. It is important to note that Donald's outrage doesn't seem to be as intense as the vice president's, as I mentioned before, as the Wink News article concludes that even if the section stays in the standards, Donald said that he has faith that no one will leave the classroom thinking slavery was in any way beneficial. So he even recognizes, saying, I have no doubt about that, because at the end of the day, if you read what is in there now, it's crystal clear to me that slavery was one of the darkest stains on our country. No doubt. There's no way to get around that. Here's the truth, everybody. The history, as both Kamala and Byron are complaining about, and grifter Al Sharpton, is not revisionist. To remove this standard would be revisionist. Straight from the words of the slaves themselves, actually, if you look in it, there were some skills that they learned while being part of the nation's original sin. Again, slavery was awful. Nobody is trying to say that it wasn't. But there were some skills that were learned while people were enslaved that carried on to benefit them once they were freed. It is not excusatory of the atrocity of slavery to say so. It's factually accurate. Some slaves did learn skills that benefited them personally once they were free. But don't just take my word for it. Dr. William Allen, a member of Florida's African American History Standards Work Group. So this is the man that basically helped devise this curricula. He said it on Jesse Waters' show. So let's take a look at that clip.
William Allen joins me now. So, Dr. Allen, why do you think Kamala Harris is being dishonest about what's being taught about slavery?
Permit me not to give you Kamala Harris's motives. They are invisible. I don't know them. We can all have suspicions that there's a dishonest purpose afoot. But what's more important than that dishonest purpose is the truth. And this curriculum is devoted to telling the truth, whereas Kamala Harris has retailed a lie. Now, it may only have been a falsehood the first time she stated it, but when you repeat a falsehood, it becomes a lie.
Tell her right now what specifically this component of the slavery course teaches.
Well, permit me to have Frederick Douglass tell her. He wrote an autobiography in which he described how the mistress of his slave owner began to teach him to read. She pulled back the curtain through which a glimmer of light shone, before the master forced her to close it. But that glimmer of light was enough for Frederick Douglass to illumine a bright flame that he exploited to his benefit and his country's benefit thereafter. Such examples are numerous, and they're retailed in the stories of people who suffered the indignity of slavery time and again. And quickly, permit me to say, what this curriculum is about is having people who live the experience, who live the history, tell their stories. And nothing is more important than that we never, ever erase the stories that the people who live the stories tell. No one has a right to interpret before first understanding the stories as the people who lived them understood them themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like he said, Frederick Douglass. And so to wrap that story up, seriously, Byron Donalds has obviously been misinformed about this. Kamala Harris goes to Florida and lies to everybody about it, saying that it's revisionist history, that there's nothing. Here's the thing is nobody even is saying that there's anything good about slavery. What is supposed to be taught, which is factually accurate, as seen from what Dr. William Allen had to say, is that Frederick Douglass, and there are many slaves that had comparable experiences, was briefly taught to read. Once he was freed, he was able to use that and eventually wrote his autobiography. Other slaves obviously had a lot of experience in farming and agriculture. Again, absolutely awful, kept in awful conditions. America's original sin. That's what it's known as. It's not overall not good, but then after they were freed, were able to use some of those skills to build to build something for themselves. Again, absolute atrocity. Slavery was absolutely awful. Nobody misinterpret what I'm saying as anything other than that. But what Florida is trying to teach, which is true, is that some slaves learned some things that they were able to exploit and use for their benefit once freed. That's all they're trying to say. So Byron Donalds, I can understand feeling uncomfortable with the reality of this curriculum. I can understand anybody feeling uncomfortable with the reality of this curriculum. History is uncomfortable. History is offensive. History is blunt. And frankly, history doesn't give a crap about your feelings. So teach history as it actually happened, and don't revise it as Kamala would like you to have. And so I'm gonna excuse Byron on this one as a misstep. And don't let this misstep turn you off of Byron. He's a good guy. He's always been a very pro-conservative guy. I just would have never had Byron Donalds sides with Kamala Harris on my bingo card, my 2023 bingo card. He has simply been misguided by a harsh reality, and it unfortunately aligned with that of grifter and great politician Kamala Harris, our not so intelligent, less than intelligent vice president. That's what I got to say about that, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I got another story out of here, also out of Congress. A Texas Democrat took drastic measures to demand the federal government implement a heat standard for workers. Actually could be an interesting policy, but Rep. Greg Kasar, who's a Texas Democrat, went on a food and water fast for these demands. Again, for heat standards for workers. His spokesperson said that he had nurses that would take his vitals throughout his food strike, throughout when he was going through this. And so it's absolutely fascinating. But really, what's really fascinating is how long he partook in this harrowing protest. My gosh, how did he survive this food and water strike? Well, let's just take a look at his Twitter. Yesterday was incredible. I was honored to be joined at my thirst strike by the workers in Texas and across the nation, and by lots of colleagues pushing for federal heat safety protections. 9 hours without water or food. 9 hours. But I'm energized more than ever to get this done. Let's look at some of these pictures here. So there's him speaking. Water breaks equals basic rights. Yeah, I agree with that. But look at this. This is him. Oh my gosh. The 9 hours without food and water, you can see down there, he's getting his vitals checked. Oh my God, he's got nurses all around him. Look at that that stare, just deprived of food and water, so difficult. There's him talking with Bernie Sanders, his socialist icon, during his food and water strike. Oh my God, these people. He was hailed by Democrats. Greg Kasar was hailed by Democrats for doing this. But the funniest thing is, okay, so 9 hours. I go through a 9-hour food and water strike every night. It's called sleeping. I don't drink a single ounce of water. I don't eat a single ounce of food for about 9 hours. I mean, 8-9 hours, whatever. Yep. So I do that. I also, for anybody who doesn't know, for my diet, I eat one meal a day. Eat a large dinner, usually around between 4 and 6. And that's my diet. So I've lost a little bit of weight. So yes, I'll admit I still drink water. That's what gets me through that. But I fast every day. And this guy is like, oh my God, we just need to pass these heat safety measures. So I'm going to fast on food and water for 9 hours. What a load of crap. These people, I've never seen that. That is probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen out of Congress. It seems like a Babylon Bee article. It really does. It seems like a Babylon Bee article, like congressman fasts for 9 hours to protest or to pass this heat and water legislation, whatever. I just can't believe it. This guy, the things that these Democrats come up with, absolutely hilarious to me. But there's another big kind of story that I'm going to follow up with. My last one of today is Dylan Mulvaney posts a celebration video celebrating 500 days of womanhood, which of course is a lot of pandering. Let's take a look at this video, and let's react to it a little bit. I don't know how long of it I'll play. If I get tired of it, I might get tired of it. But let's just see what's going on with Dylan Mulvaney. Actually, first too, everybody, people ask me, they go, "What, Kev? Why do you keep covering everything with Dylan Mulvaney? Like, don't give it attention." You want to know why? Is because Dylan Mulvaney has single-handedly pushed the needle for people to be less supportive of the destructive mental illness of gender dysphoria, and for people to stop affirming the destructive mental illness of gender dysphoria. And so if we keep promoting Dylan Mulvaney, let's put him out there as much as possible. He is like the worst face for it. I mean, look, Bud Light lost $30+ billion because of it. This is the person. We got to follow this person. Again, I don't hate Dylan. It takes a lot for me to hate somebody. I don't hate Dylan. But we need to promote talking about Dylan because he is an awful face. He's offensive to women, to real women. And he's offensive to the entire idea and sanctity of what sex and gender are. So let's get to it. Let's see what Dylan had to say about his 500th day of quote unquote womanhood.
Hi, today would be day 500 of being a girl if I was still keeping up with that series. But I found myself in kind of an interesting position because if I make the content that I want to make and freely share my trans joy, I subject myself to a lot more trauma. So lately I've chosen to scale back in order to protect my overall well-being. And it works. I am quite happy, but I'm not doing what I love. So it's kind of a bittersweet thing. But today's a big day. So screw it. It's day 500 of publicly coming out as a woman. And that's a win. And whatever your take on my series was, at its core, it was about me learning new things. And I think I've learned more since day 365 than I learned during that whole first year. So I thought we were overdue and we could use today as a little catch up on some of those things. Okay. So on day 387, I learned that trust is something that should be earned and not just instantly awarded.
That took you 387 days of pretending to be a woman to learn that trust is something that people should earn. Oh my God.
Trusting and giving person. I mean, you could walk up to me on the street and I'd probably give you my social security number if you asked. And that has definitely changed. On day 398, I learned that misery loves company.
Now, again, and I know that I'm probably going to say this for a lot of these things. It took you that long of pretending to be a woman to learn that misery loves company. That's a common cliche that I've heard since I was like 4. Misery loves company. Yes. Yes. People that are disturbed love to be surrounded by other people that are also disturbed. Misery loves company. What? Dylan, I mean, that's kind of what you're doing. You're in a type of misery with your obvious mental illness there. And I pray for you. But you obviously love company because you surround yourself with some interesting people as well. And I know you talk about that in this, but let's just keep going. What else has Dylan got to say?
I think a lot of people have difficulty seeing others happy and successful, especially when they don't fit the standard of the patriarchy. And I can't tell you enough how much.
Dylan, you are the patriarchy. What the hell are you talking about? Dylan, you are a white man. You are the definition of the left's patriarchy. If anything, you want to know how much, Dylan, you are the biggest part of the patriarchy. Because not only are you a white man, you're also a white man that is pretending to be oppressed by pretending to be a woman. So, Dylan, you are the patriarchy. You can't complain about the patriarchy. You literally are like the tippy top. You're at the tippy top of the patriarchy. What are you talking about? The patriarchy. Oh my God.
These last 4 months have felt like high school. And that pain that I hadn't experienced in my life was recently inflicted fast and furious. And I've learned that my pain doesn't take away the experience of anyone else's or other women's pain, because pain can be limitless.
Other women, you're not a woman. You're a man who pretends to be a woman. Come on, Dylan. Come on. Say the truth, please.
But so is love. But even though our pain might look different, it's still real. And we spend so much time pointing out our differences that we haven't been able to share in our similarities. And my hope is that one day we can do things differently and connect in real ways. On day 402, I learned that you can set your comments on Instagram to followers only. So if you've ever seen me.
I knew that on the first day that I joined Instagram. Or the first day that they did it on Instagram. It was like a news headline. Again, all these things. It took you that long to learn that? Like, are you dumb? You're like, what, 26, I think? 24 to 26, somewhere around that age. And it took you this long to learn a lot of those things? Like, you've lived a very sheltered life then, honey. Bro, whatever.
And nasty comments under my posts, just know that that person had to follow me in order to comment that, which is embarrassing for them and also kind of a serve because they're just making my following bigger. On day 408, I learned who my true loved ones are. I had a lot of people come into my life over the last year, but it's fascinating to actually see who goes quiet and who stands up. More than anything, I received pity, which if you ever experience pity, it doesn't actually feel good for the receiver. I think it's a way for the giver to soothe their guilt. And not to say that reaching out to someone is bad or leaving a comment, which so many of your comments made me smile on hard days, but I see more productive ways to get active and show rather than tell. But you know who came through for me these last few months? It was trans people and queer people.
Misery loves company. Misery loves company. That's what you said, Dill. That's what you learned, but you're not even applying it correctly. Misery loves company.
A lot of which saw all of this coming because they knew what it was like to be burned and I didn't. And it's like when your friend is in a bad relationship and you wait for them to see the light and then they come running back to you. Well, that was the queer community for me. You know, I gave myself and my identity to people who didn't deserve it. And then the trans and queer community was there to pick me back up without pity. And thank God for that. And thank God for them. Thank you. On day 422, I graduated to hormone injections, which have worked better for me than pills. And it's been really.
That's really sad. Like, I honestly, at that point, I know I make jokes and I know that I know that it can even come off as a little crude or whatever, or even rude. But here's the thing is that's so we are watching this person, this deeply harmed person go and intentionally destroy themselves. Like hormone injections, because apparently pills weren't weren't working good enough in either of those options. Like it's really sad. Like I said, I genuinely do pray for Dylan Mulvaney, and it's really sad to me that that some people in society exalt this and act like it's a good thing, because like this is so unbelievably destructive. At least Dylan is not like a 15-year-old, 14-year-old, 13-year-old who's going through puberty and doing puberty blockers or anything like that. But it's still destructive to the body. It's not good. It's just like, I mean, how I even kind of say like, I stay away while I've had my own mental health issues in my life. I stay away from any kind of from pills that will alter my brain function in that, like, and I'm not perfect. Like, yeah, I drink alcohol. I've indulged in nicotine before. But I want to stay away from drugs. Like, well, when I say drugs, I mean like your prescription drugs that can have a much deeper and harsher impact on your functionality. And it's just really sad to see how much Dylan is struggling.
Really beautiful to watch my body change and not having to talk about it. But something really ugly happened during these last few months where I started to believe that if I just got really pretty and if I stayed quiet, I could still find success. And that broke my heart because I was so proud of using my voice and I grew to resent it. I grew tired and I thought that being beautiful was the answer. And I mean, what kind of example is that setting? Not a good one.
I'll actually agree with that. I mean, that feeds into something I say on the show a lot. Vanity does not breed, or an overindulgence in vanity doesn't breed happiness. And like, I mean, there's beauty, wealth, cars you drive, watch you wear, anything like that. Vanity doesn't breed happiness. I mean, obviously, dressing nice can make you feel good about yourself. Oftentimes gives you a better better confidence, a confidence boost and everything. But and also, I mean, not to mention the fact that Dylan, you're living a lie, and so like you're getting more beautiful, as you would see it, is still perpetuating a lie. So yeah, you're not going to get happy with the overindulgence and vanity. So I will agree with that. I mean, that's something that Dylan obviously learned.
And I want to set an example for people who aren't naturally good at advocating for themselves, like I was not long ago and I fell back into. And that's what I love about being Gen Z, is that we're holding celebrities and politicians and companies accountable, and that a video on TikTok.
We are holding companies accountable, like Bud Light. Dylan. Love it.
Can do better numbers than an exclusive news story because we have a way to control our own narrative, and no one can tell your story better than you can. And if you are Gen Z, don't forget to vote. Like Marianne Williamson says, our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. I loved that.
Quoting Marianne Williamson,
475, I learned what it was like to have a gay best friend versus being the gay best friend.
That's really funny.
It was a very big dynamic shift, but I'm also seeing my relationships with women in my life change in really beautiful ways. And the way that straight men interact with me as I become more passing is just fascinating too. Like I had to come out to a guy last weekend at the club and he had no idea I was trans.
What?
It was so terrifying for me, but he ended up being so lovely about it. And it made me, have a lot of confidence. I was looking good.
I'm going to take things that never happened for 1,000 Alex, because I call absolute BS. Because Dylan Mulvaney's face after the Bud Light incident was plastered literally globally, became one of the most known people in the world. And you're telling me that some dude at a club didn't know who he was, who Dylan is? Like, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Maybe prove me wrong, but I don't believe it.
On day 486, I learned that blondes do have more fun. And as superficial as that might sound, it softened my features. I feel like I was holding energy and being this cookie cutter version of myself. And dyeing my hair, it felt like a way to say, screw that. I did everything to be palatable. It wasn't enough, but I'm actually a lot weirder and edgier and kooky than I let on. So excited to show that. On day 488, I learned through an online poll that 50% of Americans like me. And that felt like a Black Mirror episode, because when do non-politicians get polled like that? And I do wish that it was 51%, but I also would like to know, what exactly are we voting on? Because if it's, do they like my outfits, I think it would be much higher.
I think Dylan's making an interesting point here because, like I said, I don't hate Dylan. I don't know if I'd go as far to say I like Dylan. I think his act is offensive. However, it's a very interesting idea to think about that people polled. Do you like Dylan Mulvaney? I think that it's kind of weird. However, I don't know. The way I see it is whether or not you like Dylan Mulvaney is inconsequential, because you could like Dylan Mulvaney and still disagree with what he stands for. You could say, man, like I think he's kind of entertaining, and I like that. But you could also still be like, but like I don't support the idea of genital mutilation, especially on children, which is a thing that Dylan pushes. So, I mean, good and the bad, you could take both of them, I guess. I don't know.
But here's what I also learned from that the people that took that poll are judging me based on pictures and videos and articles. And those things make up such a small amount of who I actually am. And none of those people have met me in real life.
That's the biggest thing that I would probably agree with is, I mean, in terms of a lot of polls, because like I've met some pretty big name politicians and people and stuff like, and I've heard other people that say like they hate them. I was just having a conversation. So I met Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA. And I had a guy a few weeks ago that I was talking to, and he was just like, man, like I see like things that people say about him. I've seen him on the news, on Twitter, all that kind of stuff. And he's like, I just don't like him very much. And I go, well, I can tell you, he's a really nice guy. I mean, like I've met him, I've talked to him, had several conversations with him, and personally, he's a very nice person. And so like, that's even kind of the thing that I'd say about Dylan is, everything that I judge about Dylan are things that he puts out in the media. Not really as much. I try not to judge based on what other people put out about him. The majority of the things that I've done here have been based on his own social media posts. If you look at almost any of my videos, it's the majority of it is about his own social media posts. And so I try to only judge him based on that. But I've never met him. I'd love to. If anybody has a contact to be able to get Dylan Mulvaney on this show, I'd love to have an honest and kind and respectful conversation, where we can find where we disagree and where we agree on certain issues. But that's a big thing is, don't necessarily, I mean, a lot of people judge people based on what they see or hear from other people or third parties. Judge based on the individual and what you can learn about what that specific individual has said, done, and represents.
That took that poll, they wouldn't. It's gross to poll someone like that. And not to toot my own horn, but I think that number would be higher than 50 if the voters had shared a meal with me, because I am a very fun dinner date. On day 499, just last night, I learned that you can think you've moved on from something and healed, and bam, life goes, oh no, you don't, with a wave of grief or anxiety. So you just have to roll with the punches. And today on 500 is dedicated to my younger self, who didn't get to celebrate so many awesome discoveries because I was just hoping to get by. And today is actually day 9,705 of being a woman. Because I've always been one. My 4-year-old self knew that. My 10-year-old self knew that. My 15-year-old self knew that.
Not always.
And they deserve
it's offensive to say
these wins too. And I'm celebrating by being on a girls' trip. I'm in France.
Okay.
Oui, oui. And I'm going to go have an Aperol Spritz.
Oui, oui.
But
you hear that?
I'm just celebrating by being on a girls' trip. I'm in France. Oui, oui.
Oui, oui. That thing that you still have, Dylan. That thing that you still have. Oui, oui. The thing that will make it so you're not a woman. I mean, it's part of it, but.
And I'm going to go have an Aperol Spritz, but I just can't stress how much your support has meant to me. And I want to thank you for being along for the ride. I love you. I hope you have an amazing day. Maybe you'll learn something new too. And okay, I love you.
Thank you, Dylan, for loving me. I really do appreciate it. Here's the biggest thing about all that is Dylan Mulvaney is, like I said, worth exalting as to be the face of this whole trans thing. Primarily because he is one of the cringiest people I have ever seen, at least based on the videos that he posts. It is incredibly cringy. And I mean, even the wee wee, funny because that's what Dylan, it's kind of what you got. It's what makes one of the parts that makes you a dude, excuse me. So what do you think? What do you think about Dylan Mulvaney celebrate? And also the end there saying, I've always been a woman. I've always known I was a woman. Well, if you always knew you were a woman, And let's accept the premise that let's accept briefly, for the sake of an argument, let's accept a premise that you could actually change your gender. Like you can't. You can't. We know that, biologically impossible. But let's accept the premise that you could actually change your gender. And if you always knew you were a woman, and he even said, like, when he was a 4-year-old, when he was young, all that stuff, you always knew it. Why didn't you do anything about it then? In a world where you could actually change your gender, why didn't you do anything about it then? So, no, you haven't always been a woman. You have never been a woman. You are a biological man. But what do you think, everybody? Leave it in the comments. Am I wrong? Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me how I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I'd like to be a lot nicer. I'd like to be a lot happier. I know I can come off as pretty angry on these things, but I don't know. In public, I think I'm kind of I just had a coworker the other day be like, Evan, you always sound so angry when you're recording your shows. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I am. And like, I know a lot of you guys are angry about this stuff too. Dylan Mulvaney is offensive to women. And that makes me angry. But tell me how I'm wrong. I always ask that. Leave me a comment. Tell me how I'm wrong. Tell me how I'm wrong. I wish I was wrong about a lot of these things. I wish I was wrong about how the Democrats keep people on the Democratic plantation. I wish I was wrong about this. I don't know. I just wish the corruption we see in the White House. I wish I was wrong about the lefties that take advantage of race baiting and everything like that. I wish I was wrong. But from everything I see, I'm not. So if I am, leave me a comment. Tell me how I'm wrong. Leave your sources. Give me an explanation. If I truly am wrong on anything, I will apologize for it on this show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I know this one has been long, but I hope you appreciated the Tucker interview, everything. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. I'll see you guys next time on Speechless, The Daily Show.